disagree. Call 423-800-8949. 800-8949. Nooga Radio. AM 1240, 92.7 FM, and 95.3 HD4. News, talk, sports. Nooga Radio.
Nooga Radio Health Essentials, and I am your host, Loretta Lynn. And you've just tuned in to AM 1240 and FM 92.7 Nooga Radio, plus live streaming on YouTube and Facebook. You can also tune in on the TuneIn app. We want to welcome you to your opportunity to take control of your health. I am your health and wellness guide, inspiration, advisor, messenger, reporter, and quarterback of issues related to your health, from nutrition and supplements to alternative therapies, medical interfaces, and all health challenges and goals. I want to know what your health concerns and issues are, what your goals are, what is important to you and your family. Also, any health-related activities and events that are going on in the Nooga Radio listening or viewing area. Please call me, email, tweet, or post your health concerns, activities, and events. You can reach me at 423-605-4719, or you can look us up on Facebook at Health Essentials TN. We look forward to hearing from you. And this morning, I'd like to welcome my guest today, which is Alex McGregor. Good morning.
Good morning.
And how are you today, Alex?
Oh, I'm doing great. It's a beautiful, cool, low humidity day.
Yes, it is. It's nice to come back to that. When I left, I think it was in the 90s. It was very humid. Mm-hmm. And I just got back late last night from 7 days in Iowa, where it's nothing but cornfields and soy fields.
Oh, boy.
Yes. So what we're going to talk about today is organic farming and gardening. And I brought Alex in today since he has a wealth of experience and education to share with all of you. And if you have any questions, feel free to call us here at Nooga Radio at 423-800-8949. So, Alex, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay. I am a retired organic farmer. I started farming in 91. That was a few years ago. I was a bit younger then. And a sprayer. I had gardened organically most of my life, and always dreamed of farming. Excuse me. And so in 1991, I call it calling my own bluff, and I started farming. And had the first certified organic farm in this area, and also just to be able to sell my stuff, I helped start some farmers markets in the area. So now I'm retired. I sit and dream of farming. Still, I call myself, there's no such thing as a recovering farmer. Mm-hmm. We still have a garden. We still do things. We grow flowers and tomatoes and things like that. So.
And you have herbs now too, don't you?
Oh, yes. We have some perennial herbs, and we pick those and dry them, and we give them away as presents.
Well, that's nice. Well, for our listeners, a lot of people don't know what organic is. Can you tell us what organic farming means?
Well, it's a system. There's now the certification was taken over by the USDA, but when it was defined and certified by the farmers themselves and their organizations, it was looking to improve and maintain soil quality, where now it's pretty much just a marketing label, which means it was grown without the use of chemical fertilizers or pesticides. But it is an assurance that you're getting chemical-free food, but it's still grown. What you get in the grocery stores, the supermarkets, it's still grown on large corporate farms for the most part, where if you want really fresh produce, you need to go to one of the local farmers markets and buy directly from a farmer, a local farmer.
So you're saying that a lot of the grocery stores, from what I've seen and heard, they are still getting their produce from probably 1,500 miles away or 2,000 miles, and it's not necessarily the freshest because it's been maybe in the back of a truck for a week.
Sure, it's fresh produce in a supermarket is an average of 2 weeks old. Some of it reaches us within a week, like lettuce and broccoli, things like that. But mostly it's trucked across the country, and the reason for that being that in this part of the world, in this area of the country, we don't have many large farms just because we don't have much acreage that isn't hilly. Mm-hmm. So we traditionally in East Tennessee have small farms.
So are smaller farms necessarily better? Are you getting, you mentioned soil, different types of soil. So are they, is the soil richer here, or is there something better or different versus maybe out in the Midwest?
Well, not really. No, you have to work at it here in the Midwest, especially in the upper Midwest where they had glaciers. The soil was remineralized from the glaciation, which means it's a mineral-rich soil. In the Southeast, we haven't had much of that except for an earthquake through Kentucky and Middle Tennessee, where the soil was remineralized. That's why you have the thoroughbred farms in Kentucky and now in Middle Tennessee, because that soil has been remineralized, so the grass is high protein there. And mostly in the Southeast, we have minerally depleted soils from the high rainfall we have, plus the long warm temperatures, the season. So that gets washed out of the soil, and it has to be added back in order to make the food we grow more nutritional. Mm-hmm. And in an organic system, even where the minerals are in low quantities, in an organic system where you have a very diverse soil ecosystem, that's the biology of the soil, fungi and bacteria, they're cycling those mineral nutrients so they're plant available, so you get more mineral nutrition from an organic system than you do a chemical system.
Right. So like when we do our garden and we get compost for that, obviously a mushroom compost is going to be better than maybe just buying dirt or soil.
A bag of chemical fertilizer, yeah.
Or the manure at one of the larger department stores.
Yeah, because the mushroom compost is pretty much raw manure, and when they add peat or sawdust or some other substance to it to grow the mushrooms in.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. I know chemicals have been a hot button for people for a while now. I don't think it's just a trend. We do see more farmers markets coming up, and we see the Whole Foods and other resources where people can get fresher, or local farms will actually sell their product locally. And recently I'd heard a lot of discussion about the food contamination and from chemicals, not to name any names, but the one that comes to mind would be Roundup. Can you tell us what your experience has been with the chemicals, and why people really need to pay more attention to what they're buying and maybe even looking into starting their own garden?
Okay, well, using glyphosate, which is the main chemical in Roundup, as an example. Glyphosate, a plant physiologist told me that the glyphosate is systemic. That is, it gets absorbed into the plant. That they had found that the glyphosate chemical is very close to the chemical structure of a plant nutrient. And so the plant can't discern between the nutrient and the glyphosate, so it takes it up, and then the plant does what we do with things it can't use, like heavy metals. We store them in our tissues. The plants do the same thing. So if you have a contaminated soil with glyphosate, the plants are all going to take that up and you're going to ingest it.
Wow. That sounds very dangerous. And I know it's very harmful for people, but also for pets. People don't think about their children or their pets and how it affects them.
Right. They have more contact with the soil and the grass than we do. As adults, we usually just walk on the sidewalk. We don't play in the yard and roll down hills and, and dogs run across it. And then everybody tracks whatever's on the ground into the house, and it gets concentrated in carpets and rugs. So, and then even kids that aren't babies that don't crawl outside are crawling across the rug.
Yeah, we think we used to tell kids go outside and play, it was safe, and now we can't do that. Recently, I had interviewed a veterinarian who had talked about the glyphosates, and she said that how our pets, because they absorb a lot through their paws, it's cumulative. It's not something you can wash off or get rid of. It's accumulating in your pets and makes them very unhealthy. And so there has been a rise in cancer and I think other diseases.
Right. So, and a lot of people think that you can just wash that off the surface of it. I had a woman in a store. I was buying organic bananas, and she was buying the chemically grown bananas. And she said, "Why don't you buy these? They're a lot cheaper." I said, "Well, these are organic. They don't have any chemicals." And she said, "Oh, well, things that you peel, you get rid of that, and you can just eat what's inside." And I tried to explain to her, but she...
It's kind of hard to re-educate.
Yeah, and they did a study where they scrubbed vegetables, chemically grown, with soap and hot water and a vegetable brush. Yeah.
I was just going to ask about that. Yeah,
right, and they were able to remove only about, at the most, 20% of the chemicals contained in it. They tested it before and after.
Mm-hmm. So that doesn't sound healthy. And I think that's why a lot of us are sick today. A lot of us are getting chemicals or toxins in our body, and it's such a minute percentage that we don't realize it until later on down the road. We're constantly getting, our immune system's been attacked, and we need to find ways to remove those toxins from our body.
Well, most of the food in the store is processed, and when you turn it around and read that tiny print of ingredients, and you see that it's more than you want to read, and you can't pronounce half the words on there, then we're getting all of that in our bodies also, which we were never meant to eat it. And some of them, you can't, they're just plain poison. But they can put it in minute amounts and it uses preservatives and flavorings and all kinds of things.
I've always had a problem with the sugar substitutes, for example. Because if it causes cancer in rats, doesn't that say it causes cancer in humans? Why would you want to put that in your body?
Yeah, exactly. It's they're the canaries in the coal mine, as it were.
Yeah, and it's really not that difficult to have your own garden, even if you're an urban city dweller. You can have raised gardens. You can have container gardens, patio gardens.
Right. You can have a windowsill garden, even if you don't even have a fire escape or a patio or something. You can still grow some herbs and things like lettuce or green onions, all kinds of things in containers on a windowsill.
Yeah, and no animals will be hurt in the process.
I used to, when I moved to Cincinnati many years ago, I rented a row house that had a concrete front yard and a concrete backyard with a garage. And I'd always had a garden, and well, the guy next door to me in the row house had a container that he grew flowers in every year. He planted every spring, he planted flowers in it. So I thought, hey, I can do that. So I built some boxes, got some soil, and grew some flowers and tomatoes and peppers.
That's what I would do. You've got to have some greenery around. You have to have, it's healthy.
And Joel Tippins at Grow Hope Urban Farm started on a asphalt parking lot with a community garden, and they built raised beds out of lumber. And he also grew in tires. They filled them with compost and soil, and he grew in tires, filled them up, grew tomatoes.
Are tires safe? I've seen that. I think my sister she's growing potatoes, I think, inside a tire and I just was concerned about the rubber, what chemicals are in that.
I don't know.
But they use that for growing.
Yeah, but if you're concerned about that, any kind of scrap lumber, concrete blocks, bricks, what have you got? I've seen where they used old roofing tiles, the curved clay tiles.
Oh, yeah.
to build raised beds.
Wow.
Just whatever
Clever.
scrap, metal roofing, old metal roofing, whatever you got. You just build it and grow something.
And grow organic, keep it
Yes.
healthy. What about, and I know we started to talk about not using chemicals for your plants.
Right.
And do you have tips, or what do you use to keep bugs away or aphids on your vegetables?
Well, having growing organically and not using any pesticides, we have a very high predator population on our land. I have watched the paper wasps fly in and take caterpillars, bean beetle caterpillars off of the bean plants. We have a spider population. In the morning with the dew, you can go out, and wherever there's any kind of an indentation in a bed or the soil or in the grass, it's a spider web there. So we have very little problems. Our big problem is voles, V-O-L-E-S, not moles. They're an underground mouse that eats roots and plants. And so we have a rodent problem, pretty much. They're the best fed voles on the surface of the earth. But really, we don't have much problem. And mostly I use barriers. I use, for something like broccoli or cabbage, I grow them. I start the plants in flats, in cells, and keep them covered with screen wire, the box they're sprouting in. And then when we transplant it, we cover it with a floating row cover. It's a very lightweight fabric. The plants can just lift up, and something like 80 to 90% of the sunlight goes through and the water goes through them. And we leave them covered. We uncover them to check them or to weed them or something. But we leave them covered so the moths can't get in and lay those eggs for the caterpillars that ruin it.
Right.
So we block them for bean beetles. We leave them covered till they bloom, and then we take that off so the pollinators can get in. And so we're picking beans. We're harvesting the crop about the time that the bean beetle eggs are hatching, so we don't really have any much damage from them.
Awesome.
So what we do is we try to outsmart the insects.
Yes. Got to be one step ahead of them.
Yes.
I know there are some other natural remedies I've heard of too, with just water. And I know somebody once mentioned using Dawn dish soap, but I don't know that that works very well.
You can make an insecticidal soap. You have a call there?
We do. We'll take a caller. Good morning. You're on the air with Health Essentials. Who are we speaking with?
This is Greg. One thing that a lot of people don't think about, they'll go to the stores, like I literally just left Whole Foods over at Hamilton Place, and you're trying to get the best food you can, but then every once in a while you want to treat yourself out, and you'll go to a restaurant, and you have no idea where the restaurant is getting their foods and their meats to know what chemicals and additives might be in theirs. You're paying a premium to get the very things you've been struggling to not get.
True.
Right.
Yes. And I know there are, you can actually go online. There are websites where there are local farmers that serve local restaurants. And that's one way, if you're local, to do that. I know when you're traveling, it might be a little more cumbersome to attack that problem. But there are websites where you can find local farmers and find where the local restaurants are. So you're getting the fresher organic food for farm to table.
Yeah, so if you go to growchattanooga.org, it has a listing. It's Taste Buds, if you're watching us on the internet, is the name of the publication, but they have a data bank that lists local farms, local farmers markets, restaurants that serve local farm food, and also stores that sell it.
Okay. Well, thank you. Great. It's a great point.
Thank you.
Have a great day. That is a very good question. I know I just got back from traveling, and I was concerned. I'm somewhat of a vegetarian, and being concerned about my health and what I put in my body, because it does affect me a lot when I'm if I eat greasy foods or spicy foods. So I do try to look for local foods or, fresh food when you're out traveling. That sometimes, that is hard to not do that.
Yeah, you pretty much, when we traveled, we would take a lot of food with us and stay in a place that had a suite with a kitchenette available. We prepared a lot of our food, or we lived on sandwiches or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we try to bring our own food when we camp. We camp a lot and go hiking and bike riding, and you can only store food for so many days. But then you have to go find ahead of time. You always have to do planning. Yes. But I think planning always is, it's,
so yeah, and I do a lot of research online with things like Grow Chattanooga. For Chattanooga, it's very easy, but it is possible to go online and find some locally sourced serving restaurants in the cities where you're going. So I try to make a list for us.
Yes, I agree. It's safer, and you feel better too. Physically, you have more energy, and I know we talked a little bit about how why local, why buy fresh, and about when we're transporting vegetables or other produce or food from across the country, how you lose a lot of the nutrients that way.
Mm-hmm. And the other thing, the locally grown, when you're buying it directly from the farmer, see, what I wanted to do is I wanted to grow the most nutritious food I could, not only for my family, but for everyone. I felt it was even a greater burden to produce that if I'm selling it to somebody else, just ethically. So that's one thing. Also, it has to taste good. When I started farming, I grew bush beans and nobody would buy them. Everybody's going, no, I want pole beans. I want pole beans. I found out later that season, I read an article on the new machine pickable green bean, bush bean, that everybody was growing and they were selling in the stores. Well, they were tough and they had no flavor, so nobody would buy them. Finally, I gave one woman about a pound of green beans. I put them in a big handful in a bag, and I said, here, go home and cook this and tell me what you think. She came back to the market the next week and said, you fooled me. You gave me pole beans. Because those tasted good and they were tender, not like those bush beans in the store. So what's sold in the store is selected for a uniform size and for the toughness to be able to be machine picked like the green beans, and or to ship it across country so it doesn't turn into mush on the way. So you can't have a vine ripened tomato from California. Right. That's not going to happen. No. Nope. So
unless you FedEx it in a couple of hours.
So that's another benefit of buying locally, is you get a lot of varieties. I grow a lettuce, a Batavian type lettuce, that isn't sold in the stores because it's too tender to ship. It's the best tasting lettuce you'll ever have. I have people who bring their friends to the market and say, you have to buy his lettuce.
That's good. A lot of people have been raised on one thing or another, and they just use that for great change. Well, we are getting ready to go to break, and you are listening to Health Essentials on Nooga Radio. My name is Loretta Lynn, and my guest is Alex McGregor, and we'll be back right after this break.
The Tennessee Valley's news, talk, and sports leader, Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM.
I've got a $10 bill for you at the best paint store in Chattanooga. David here. Big savings in exterior stains. Chattanooga Paint and Decorating. More than a paint store. Bring up $100 on your next upgrade. Plunk down just $90. Save on all outdoor stains in stock at Chattanooga Paint and Decorating. Prolix Sickens. Benjamin Moore, Flood, Sanson, Richards. 10% off through May 13th. Jim and his team are here to help and advise and to help you hold on to your money. 5529 Hickson Pike. Chattanooga Paint and Decorating. ChattanoogaPaint.com.
Hi, this is Nadia behind the green door. You've had ice cream and you've had shaved ice, but have you had snow cream? It is amazing. It's light, airy, fruity snowflakes melting on your tongue. You need to come and see us. Highway 58, Green Door next to Hardee's.
The Tennessee Valley's news, talk, and sports leader. Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM.
If you've suffered a personal injury or a loved one was the victim of a wrongful death, give the lawyers at McCoon, Williams, Ashley, and Stanley a call. Our attorneys can help you or your business with a wide array of challenges to provide you with the highest quality legal services through the combination of our talents, experience, and expertise. If you're hit by business problems or need legal organization, we're here to help. Visit MWALawFirm.com. That's MWALawFirm.com. Give us a call at 423-756-6400. That's 756-6400.
He spent lots of sunshine and good-looking weather out there through your afternoon. High settling into the mid and upper 80s tonight. Clear, comfortable again. Low 63 to 65. For Monday and Tuesday, continue dry. Still nice and pleasant with highs each day back into the upper 80s. Check out Lowe's and get an extra 5% off every day with your Lowe's Advantage card. Subject to credit approval and can't be combined with any other credit offers. Exclusions apply. See store for details. And I'm 1412 Chief Meteorologist Patrick Core. On Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM.
The Tennessee Valley's news, talk, and sports leader. Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM.
Good morning, and you are listening to the Radio Health Essentials. I'm your host, Loretta Lynn, AM 1240 and FM 92.7. And I want to welcome you back from our break. Before we get back with our guest, I wanted to talk to you about if you are interested in reducing exposure to chemicals and toxins in your body. Are natural products important to you? Then learn specific benefits about essential oils and how to use them in everyday life, from healthcare to cleaning products. Call today for a free consultation at 423-605-4719. And with that, I'd like to reintroduce my guest, Alex McGregor. Hi, Alex. How are you doing?
I'm doing just great. How are you?
I'm wonderful for a Monday morning.
Oh, yeah.
It's been I'm blessed to live here in Chattanooga. One of the greatest cities in the country, and
we think so.
Yes, yeah. A lot of people think so. I don't think it's just us, but we want to keep people healthy and happy. We have a wonderful smorgasbord of cultural activities here as well. And Alex and I are talking about organic farming and gardening and the different benefits and issues that surround that. And right before break, we were talking about farm to table, but also he'd mentioned the soil. He has an extensive background in soil composition and testing and remineralization, and how important that is. I know when I've seen growing up that farmers will, they move their crops around every couple of years. Mm-hmm. And why is that? Why do they need to do that?
Well, a number of reasons. Different crops take up different amounts of different minerals in the soil, but mostly it's done to suppress any soil-borne diseases specific to that crop. If you don't grow that crop, then they can't survive, and there are a number of reasons for it. And you also add in an organic farm, you add in a cover crop as part of that, or a green manure crop that you can plow down and capture the nutrients that the plants have absorbed from that.
Mm-hmm. So I know a lot of people are doing the raised garden beds now. We've been doing it, and some friends of ours are doing it. And we started to talk about how if you have a limited space, or if you're in an apartment or a townhome, that you can still have fresh organic vegetables, fruits, herbs.
Right.
So when you have a raised bed, what kind of soil and compost, what do you recommend people do? How do they start it, and how often should they change that out?
You don't really need to change it out.
You don't. It doesn't leach.
You just need some topsoil and some compost, some organic matter. You can usually buy that. The mushroom compost is one thing at a garden center, or there are there's a startup company now looking at collecting compost from people, they're compostables, and composting it, and then you pay a monthly fee and you get compost back, finished compost.
Okay.
So
recycles.
The important thing is to add in the organic matter, because in an organic system, we're dependent on the soil life, the bacteria and the fungi in the soil to change those minerals into a plant absorbable form, because they can't, it's just like if we ate powdered limestone, we wouldn't get any calcium out of it, or some iron dust or something. No, we wouldn't absorb that. It turns it into an absorbable compound. So, and the organic matter is the food for them. That ensures that you have a very wide-ranging. For instance, a friend of mine, back before Main Street became the place, when it was just boarded up stores, and he rented the second floor of the old furniture building there and turned it into a studio apartment for his family, and had a flat roof, so he built a couple of 4x4 boxes up there. At the time, just across the alley, there was a greenhouse that had a big pile of potting medium. It was peat moss and such mixed together. And he bought enough to fill those boxes and carried up in 5-gallon buckets. Then he transplanted his chard and some other things, arugula, lettuce plants into it. And he called me up and said, I put these things out and it's been 2 weeks and they're still the same size. They're not growing. I'm watering them every day. What's going on? And I asked him about it. He told me what he was growing them in. And I said, well, and he had added some soybean meal for a nitrogen source. And so I said, well, you don't have any biology. Come by the house. I'll give you I gave him a plastic shopping bag that had maybe, I don't know how much, maybe a quart's jar's worth of finished compost in it. I said, sprinkle this around, mix it in the top few inches of your boxes, and then see what happens. And he called me up a few days later and said, I went up on the roof yesterday and there was so much ammonia coming out of those beds that I couldn't breathe. He said, and the plants are now much bigger in just a few days.
That's great.
So it's that soil, adding that soil biology to process the nutrients so the plants can absorb them.
Yeah, that's, I think a lot of people have, they think they can go out and just put a few seeds in the ground and expect it to grow, but you really need to be aware of what kind of soil you have and what's going to grow there, or what are you missing.
And we have many different types of soil because of our topography, the way the ground is. There are hundreds of different kinds of soils in East Tennessee, and you can have a soil type change across the field 2 or 3 times in this area if it's on a slope. So, but you need to add the organic matter. Another important thing that nobody talks about hardly is the minerals in the soil. We have depleted minerals, as I said earlier, in southeastern soils due to our high rainfall and our long warm season. They're getting washed out of the soil. They're getting processed into soluble minerals and washed out of the soil. So adding those back in is important, and the balance that you add back in. For instance, when I started a garden, we had just bought the property, and that summer I put out some tomato plants, and they turned yellow. They were chlorotic. They looked like they had an iron deficiency. And I thought, well, the soil here, the parent rock material is orange from all the iron oxide in it. It can't be an iron shortage. So I had a soil testing company analyze it for the 10 major plant nutrients, and it came back that the soil saturation rate of calcium from lime was something like 92%. Now I can remember the guy we bought the property from saying, you ain't going to have to lime that garden for a long time. So he had over-limed it, and Steve Rioch at Timberleaf Soil Testing explained to me how calcium will block the uptake of iron. So I had an artificial iron shortage. Plenty of iron in the soil, but the plants couldn't take it up because there was too much calcium.
Right. Kind of like our bodies can only absorb certain things. You need certain vitamins.
Getting those minerals back in the soil and then in the right balance. And you have to use a professional soil testing service to tell you that. And the most consistent one I found is Timberleaf.
Are they local or were they out?
No, they're in California.
And how does a person know, I mean, what to do or when to look for? Do you need to have your soil tested?
I would recommend, Timberleaf is, a lot of soil testers, they'll say you have to do it at least once a year. Timberleaf says if you're a professional farmer, you need to do it yearly. If you're a gardener, every 3 years is fine.
3 years, yeah.
Yeah, unless there's something really strange going on in your soil.
Okay.
But I've had the experience of my wife saying, since you started adding minerals in the garden, our vegetables taste better every year as we took the calcium level down and brought them up. And I've had people at farmers markets come up and whisper, don't tell any of the other farmers this, but your vegetables taste better than anybody else's.
Gotta know the secrets. Yes.
So it's flavor. There's a thing called a Brix test where you test a vegetable or fruit for the amount of sugar in it.
Okay.
And they do that because there's a direct relation. There's a direct correlation between sugar content and minerals in that food. And the higher the sugar, the higher the minerals. So I think we have taste buds that say sweet tastes good.
I was just, yes, I think that's where that's going. We all have a sweet tooth.
I have this theory that if you look at any processed food in the store, it contains some kind of sugar.
Yeah, sugar stuff, sucralose.
Right. So we're programmed for sugar and fat, sadly enough.
Yes. But like you said earlier, you did mention too that organic, when you buy fresh, the food does taste better. And sometimes it's just a matter of changing our taste buds or opening our minds up to trying new things. And there's lots of recipes out there thanks to the internet. And whether you're on Pinterest or Instagram, you can find tons of recipes. And even the farmers themselves provide recipes. Sure,
that's a good source. Yeah. And now with the internet, I don't see how cookbook companies are staying in business. Because if we love lo mein, vegetable lo mein. And I said, well, we'll have to go to a restaurant. You got to get cleaned up. You got to go, you got to drive there. You got to order, you got to wait. I'm going to look up a recipe. And I searched for lo mein recipes and there was 200,000 of them available on the internet.
Yeah. Lots of variables.
Yeah, so I read 5 or 6 and put them together and go, oh, this sounds good. I'll take this from that one.
Borrow from this one.
Here's a shortcut. Here's a tip.
If you don't have this, substitute this one, this herb.
Right, so where there's really no excuse. And people say, how do you, they go, what things do you avoid on the label? And I said, well, I try to buy things that have one ingredient.
Yes. If you can't pronounce it, then you don't want to put it in your body.
Right. That's if it wasn't in food when your grandmother was around, then you shouldn't be.
Even the grease and lard, I know it's kind of a southern thing with fried chicken and fried. Everything's fried down here. They fry Oreos now. And pickles. I saw
butter. Deep fried butter. Can you think of any?
No.
I saw that. A friend sent me a picture from a fair in Nevada, and it had in the background deep fried butter banner, and I thought it was a joke. I thought he had photoshopped that in because I'm from Tennessee.
Yes. People they assume because I live in Tennessee. Fortunately, I'm not from here, but I am from the South. It is different cultures, different food ethnicities and tastes, and I run across that everywhere you go. Whether, especially in the South, they're like, oh, you must drink a lot of sweet tea. Well, no, I like unsweet tea. I like no caffeine, no, maybe some fresh citrus or something in there for flavor. But it's kind of a natural current thing that, you eat a lot of fried food. No.
Right. And sweet tea. You mentioned earlier about taste changing. I started having spells. And a friend of mine that was diabetic, I described it to him. He said, oh, you had an insulin reaction. When I read up and found out they doctors poo-pooed it at the time, but it was low blood sugar. I had too much insulin. And when in between meals, my blood sugar level would drop. And so the cure was cold turkey on all forms of sugar, including fruit, for 2 weeks. And then you can add back in some fruit. So I went cold turkey, And over the years, I don't like sweet things anymore. And I can taste the sweetness in fruits and vegetables now because I'm not overdosed.
Yeah, I think that unfortunately that's what our society is. You see Coke machines now at elementary schools, middle schools. They have all these vending machines with junk food in them. Their menus. I was reading up last night about the changes in what the government, the food, meals, the meal plans for kids at schools. And it's not healthy. And then we wonder why our kids are sick all the time, or they're not focusing in class. You've got kids with ADD,
disorders,
ADHD, and a lot of these diseases can be controlled, minimized, or eradicated, I believe, by diet and exercise. And I know those are two things. Those are the magic pills. There is no other magic formula to make you healthy other than diet and exercise.
Yeah, now I've just read something this morning about a study done with children who eat a lot of fresh fruit and vegetables when they're very young. They're raised on that. Their shopping habits tend to be towards fresh fruit and vegetables. But kids that grow up on Cokes and candy bars and cookies and things like that will tend to have bad eating and shopping habits when they're adults. So
and even as adults, our habits change. If you get in a hurry or you're working a lot and you're stressed, you run into the grocery store, or if you're hungry, that's the worst time to shop because then you're buying everything. But I was taught, I think, to shop the perimeter of the store. That's where the freshest food is.
The produce, dairy sections, it's really not that hard. We cook from scratch, and we were cooking from scratch when we were farming full time. So you can figure out how to feed hungry workers. What we would do is we turned dried beans into a fast food by cooking them in a pressure cooker. Also rice. So we have two pressure cookers, one for grains, one for beans. We can cook them at the same time. It takes about the same amount of time. And we would cook quantities and freeze it. So we could take out a freezer container of, say, pinto beans, and we would have bean burrito base. And you just learn how to do it, and you time it, and you can cook from scratch. And the raw vegetables are, real easy to cook.
My favorite. I love it because I hate canned foods, and frozen foods would be the next best. Because at least you're getting some of your nutrients in there, and it's frustrating when your body feels it. Last week I was on a bike ride for 7 days across Iowa, and it was hard to maintain that, but I did try to take my vitamins, my supplements every day, which are whole food supplements, because you're not going to get it from the food. You can't eat 12 servings of vegetables in one day. And being somewhat of a vegetarian, I had to make sure I was getting the protein and getting the minerals I needed for the endurance too, and keep my bones strong. So there's no harm in that. But the fresh vegetables, just planning it takes us back to the way it should have been, or should be again, is planning your meals, taking a list. And it's so much easier with the technology we have today. I keep a list on my phone. I go to the grocery store. Here's my menu. This is what I need. And then if you have a garden, you can, you freeze it, you can it, jar it, whatever. My sister, I think, made some pickles last week and took them up to her daughter in Illinois. I saw that on Facebook.
People would ask me all the time, we'd have some vegetables left over in the market. Said, well, you ought to sell those to me real cheap. What are you going to do with them? And I say, everything we grow gets eaten, sold, canned, or frozen. Lettuce is tough, but we eat a lot of lettuce. We have a lot of salads if we have too much lettuce.
We have very little leftovers at my house. My boyfriend does almost all the cooking. And he's really good at portioning things out. And if we have leftovers, or when we have our garden when we're in town, we'll freeze stuff. A lot of us love rhubarb. And I like arugula is one of my favorites. And I think my arugula disappeared when I was out of town. But we have more. Last year we had way too many tomato plants, so we were giving tomatoes away to everybody, and we made stewed, froze them a lot. So throughout the winter we had those as a base for sauces or other meals.
That's what my wife discovered, was we had an abundance of tomatoes in the summer, and we'd been canning them, and it just gets so hot you don't want to can, especially if you don't have air conditioning. So she said, I'm going to put these in the freezer. And when the weather cools off in the fall, I'll take them out and can them then. I said, great idea. Well, we wound up just taking them out of the freezer because you can take a tomato at a time out of a bag. We'd take a bunch out, and then as soon as they start thawing, the skins slip right off of them. So they're real easy. We just put a bunch of those in a pot and make spaghetti sauce or put them in tomato soup, vegetable soup or whatever.
Sounds good. Now, is there I didn't know if there's like a shelf life, because whenever I see something in the freezer for too long, if I saw like freezer burn on it. Yeah. Is that? It's a kind of, it's still safe. It's kind of an aesthetic thing. Oh, it's just aesthetic? Yeah. Usually they say a year, but we usually put them in freezer bags. And then we put the freezer bags in another heavy bag, a larger heavy bag, like 3 or 4 bags of tomatoes, and then put a twist tie on that, and we double bag it, and that helps a lot. Extends it some. Extends the life. Okay. Yeah, I wondered about that. I know with all the Tupperware and different Rubbermaids and things out there, what's safe in the fridge. I was always taught 3 days, for leftovers. But who knows? Who knows? It's your nose and your stomach, I guess. I have a friend who teaches biology, and she says she always goes to the back of her refrigerator when they're studying mold and fungus in biology class, so she can take something to class with her. Yeah, I usually find at least one science experiment in my fridge. Oh, yes. Yeah. Great. Well, we didn't get a chance to talk much about solar power. I know you used some solar power on your farm. Yes. Right. What do you use? How much do you use, or what has it done for you? Well, what we did, we looked at a solar. We had some money in a CD, and the interest rates were dropping every time we renewed it. And it was getting ridiculous. It was down to 1%. And so my wife, we need solar. We got to have solar. This was an environmental thing for her, and I'm thinking, I'm saying, no, we have to look at it economically. So I did an analysis of what the system would cost, how much we could produce, and what we could sell it for, and computed our return on investment. That is, how much do we get back if we invest this amount of money? Right. And it came out between 7 and 7.5% a year. Wow. Yeah, so we had the system installed, and we sell all of it directly to the grid. And EPB gives us a credit for it, and we're producing about twice as much electricity as we use. That's awesome. So are you self-sufficient then, or? No, we sell it all to the grid, and we still have a meter on the house, and a meter for the farm on the barn. So we buy it back off the grid. We're selling it for 21 cents a kilowatt hour and buying it back for 9 cents a kilowatt hour. Okay. So what? Yeah, that's a win-win. I'll take that. Yeah. I had a friend say, I don't get that. How are you making money doing that? And I said, I'll sell you my car for $21,000, then I'll buy it back for $9,000. There we go. You get it. Yeah, I look at solar a lot with our camping. We always try to be very efficient with our gas mileage, because we have a eco diesel truck that we're always looking. Right. We got 30.5 miles, per gallon on the way up, and so it's important to, when you watch those pennies, it does make a difference. Other things you could spend that on for quality of life. Yeah, so you can do it. And now solar systems are a lot less expensive than they were 8 years ago when we had ours installed. Becoming more and more popular. Another topic for another day. Well, wanted to thank our guest, Alex McGregor, for coming out today and joining us on Health Essentials here on Nooga Radio. Right. And I know you still have a Facebook page up. That's how I found you. So how do people get in touch with you, Alex, if they have questions? They can go to the Walden Farm Facebook page. Okay. And we mentioned a little bit about one of the organizations that you work with, Hope Urban. Grow Hope Urban Farm, yes. Okay. I do consulting for them for free. I volunteer. Mm-hmm. And what they are is it's Hope for the Inner City, and they do programs in the inner city areas, in neighborhoods with youth and adults, to enhance the quality of life there. And one of the things they're doing is a program to teach people how to farm. Well, we appreciate that. Thank you. And we hope to have you back again, Alex. You're a wonderful guest. And this is Loretta Lynn, coming to you live from Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and FM 92.7. You're on Health Essentials. Don't forget.
The Tennessee Valley's news, talk, and sports leader. Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM.
And now to our reporter in the field.
We asked Ray at Ray's Plumbing what's important for homeowners to know.
Some field line systems can cost upwards of $10,000. The bottom line is to save yourself money down the road. I would definitely recommend everybody with a septic that is not on county or city sewer to have an inspection done by a qualified professional. It'd be great if nobody did inspections on them for all plumbing companies. That's what we do to make a living. Not to scare anyone, but it should be in the back of your mind. The danger is the field lines failing and costing thousands upon thousands of dollars and tearing your yard up. By preventative maintenance, you're saving yourself a large headache that may displace yourself and your family. That happens more often than you think. The waste is designed to stay in the tank, and that waste will build up over time. Even with treatment, we have to help that waste break down. Ultimately, preventative maintenance is the key that will keep you from spending $5,000 to $10,000 on replacing your septic system. The bottom line is to save yourself money down the road.
Call Ray at Ray's Plumbing, 421-6341, 421-6341.